I need a strong husband and you need a strong son. Layla Boone's voice cut through the desert air like wind through canyon stone. 40 weapons held steady between two groups of desperate people. The sun burned overhead. Nobody moved. The Comanche warrior across from her had eyes like flint, dark, unreadable. His hand rested near his knife but hadn't drawn it. Good. She needed him listening, not fighting. You heard me right. Layla stood 6 feet and 2 inches in her worn boots. The leather creaked as she shifted her weight. Behind her, 43 souls waited for her next words. Freed slaves, army deserters, widows with children. All of them running from something. All of them sick. The warrior's name was Tacho Blackman. She'd learned that much from the Mexican trader 3 weeks back. Sub-chief of his band. Young for the responsibility. Fighting something invisible that was killing his people same as hers. Lower your weapons. Tacho's command came in English, accented but clear. His warriors hesitated. Confusion rippled through their ranks. A woman proposing marriage to end a standoff wasn't in their training. Layla's people kept their rifles raised. She hadn't given the order yet. Trust had to be earned drop by drop in this country, like water from a poisoned well. The morning had started different. Her scouts reported riders approaching the water hole, armed riders. In these parts that meant trouble. Her people had hidden in the rocks, waited, watched. Then the Comanche hunting party arrived. Not the attackers who'd been picking off her stragglers for weeks. Different enemies entirely. Both groups drew weapons by instinct. Both groups were wrong. My people are dying. Layla kept her voice steady, matter of fact. Yours too, from what I can see. 3 of Tacha's warriors swayed in their saddles. Fever, sweat. Same symptoms her people showed before they started coughing blood, before they stopped waking up. You know something about strong sons. She nodded toward his band. I know something about strong husbands. Maybe we can help each other instead of adding to the buzzard feed. The desert held its breath. Vultures circled overhead. They smelled death coming. They were patient birds. Tacho's horse stamped once. Dust rose from its hooves. The warrior studied Layla like she was a puzzle box, taking apart her words, looking for the trap inside. You're the Black Widow, not a question. Her reputation traveled these parts faster than bad news, faster than cholera. They say you killed 3 men in Tucson. They say lots of things. Layla's fingers twitched near her Colt. Most of them true, but I didn't ride here to kill Comanche. Got bigger problems than old feuds. Behind Tacho, an older warrior whispered something urgent. The words came in their native tongue, but the meaning was clear. Don't trust her. Kill them all, take the water. Smart advice. Wrong situation. Something's been hitting both our camps. Layla spoke before Tacho could answer his man. Same boot prints, same bullets. Same hate for anyone who doesn't fit their plans. She'd found the evidence 2 days ago. Foreign boots in familiar patterns. Rifle casings that didn't match any gun her people carried. Someone was playing both sides against each other. You're suggesting alliance. Tacho's voice carried no emotion, could have been discussing the weather, with strangers, with enemies, with people who want to live. The wind picked up. It carried dust and the smell of alkali water. Also carried the sound of approaching horses, distant but getting closer. Both groups heard it. We can sort this out later. Layla jerked her chin toward the sound. Or we can die here arguing about it. Tacho's head tilted. Listening, counting hoofbeats, his expression changed. Those weren't his people coming. 3 days. His decision came fast and final. We talk, we share water, we share information. After that, we decide if your proposal has merit. Fair enough. Lower weapons. This time Layla gave the order too. Rifle barrels dropped on both sides. Tension eased by degrees. Not gone, just banked like coals under ash. The approaching riders were still coming, getting closer. But now 43 outcasts and 12 Comanche warriors faced the same direction. That changed the mathematics considerably. Layla walked forward. Tacho dismounted. They met in the space between their people, 2 leaders gambling everything on a stranger's word. You really think this could work? Tacho asked. His voice dropped low. Private conversation now. I think we're both too stubborn to die easy. Layla extended her hand. And too smart to die stupid. He took it. His grip was firm, calloused from weapons and rope work. A working man's hands, she respected that. The hoofbeats were getting louder. The riders turned out to be merchants, Mexican traders with pack mules and nervous eyes. They took one look at the mixed camp and spurred their horses harder. Dust clouds marked their retreat across the flats. Layla watched them disappear. Even honest men ran from what they didn't understand. Her people had learned that lesson in blood and broken promises. They'll talk. Tacho stood beside her now, close enough that she caught the scent of sage smoke in his hair. Word will spread about this meeting. Good. Let folks wonder what we're planning. The water hole lay between two red stone walls. Natural fortress. Both groups had claimed the high ground by instinct. Now they shared the shade. Wary truce written in the space between bedrolls. Layla's medicine woman, Judith, tended the sick from both camps. Old woman with scarred hands and knowing eyes. She'd seen fever before. This was different, deeper. Something that ate at the spirit before it took the body. Tell me about this curse. Layla crouched beside Tacho as he cleaned his rifle. Methodical work, soothing in its precision. Rival shaman claims our ancestors offended the spirits. Tacho's fingers moved over worn metal, oil and patience. Started 3 moons ago, people waste away. No medicine helps. Same time my folks started dying. He looked up from his work. Understanding passed between them without words. Coincidence was rare as honest politicians in this territory. You were Union Army. Not a question, he'd seen her move. The way she positioned her people, the automatic way she checked sight lines. Scout, 3rd Cavalry. Layla settled cross-legged on the hard ground. Spent 2 years tracking Confederate supply lines through desert country. Learned to read sign. Learned to stay alive. Why leave? The question hung in the dry air. Why leave steady pay and army rations for a life of running and hiding? She could have told him about the orders that made her sick. The villages burned because they might harbor enemies. The children who looked at her with fear in their eyes. Instead, she pointed to her people. Found something worth protecting. Mary Caldwell sat with 3 Comanche women, sharing jerky and sign language. Mary's husband had been lynched in Arkansas for owning property while black. She'd walked 800 miles west with nothing but determination and a derringer. Young Samuel worked beside a Comanche boy, gathering wood for the evening fires. Samuel's parents had died of cholera in Kansas. The boy had attached himself to Layla's group and refused to leave. Smart child, quick with numbers and quicker with his hands. You collect strays. Tacho's observation carried no judgment, just fact. Strays collect each other out here. The sun tracked west. Heat shimmered off stone walls. Both groups maintained careful distance, but the initial hostility had faded into watchful curiosity. Hunger and shared water had a way of making strangers into neighbors. That evening, Tacho's warriors demonstrated their skill with horses, riding bareback at full gallop, hanging from the animals' necks, moving like they'd been born in the saddle. Layla's people watched with respectful attention. Art deserved appreciation, whatever its source. When the exhibition ended, Layla stood and walked to the center of the camp. Her people knew that stance. Preparation for something important. She drew her Colt, fast, smooth. The weight settled in her palm like greeting an old friend. 6 shots at a 10 can 30 paces away. 6 hits. The metal rang in the evening air. Tacho nodded slowly. Recognition of skill matched to his own. Neither showing off nor backing down, just honest demonstration of capability. Your proposal. His words carried across the fire. What exactly are you offering? Layla holstered her weapon. The metal was still warm against her hip. Partnership, my tactical knowledge, your understanding of the land, combined strength against whatever's been picking us off. And the marriage, if it comes to that, if we find we can work together. She met his eyes across the flames. I'm not asking for love, I'm asking for alliance. But something shifted in her chest when she said it, the possibility of more than just survival. of building instead of running. The idea scared her worse than cavalry charges or Apache raids. Later, when the fires burned low and most folks had sought their blankets, Layla found herself walking the perimeter. Old habits. In the army, they'd called it checking the pickets. Now it was just restlessness wearing grooves in the earth. Tacho emerged from the shadows, silent as smoke. His approach triggered no alarm. Her body had already learned to recognize his presence as safe. Can't sleep either. Too many questions. He stopped beside her at the canyon's edge. Below them, the desert stretched silver under starlight. Too many variables. They stood in comfortable silence. Two people carrying the weight of other lives. The responsibility carved lines around their eyes, left them suspicious of easy answers and quick solutions. The sickness. Judith's voice made them turn. The old woman approached slowly. Her joints protested the cool night air. It's not natural, something in the water, something in the land itself. Poison? Layla asked. Maybe. Or worse. Judith's eyes held knowledge that came from decades of watching people die. Whatever it is, it's deliberate, targeted, meant to weaken specific groups. Tacho's jaw tightened. Someone wants us gone. Question is who? And why now? Layla's mind turned over possibilities. Railroad interests, mining companies, settlers who wanted clean title to disputed land. The list was long and ugly. We need to scout. Tacho's statement carried military precision. Find the source, track the evidence. Together, together. The words settled between them, heavier than partnership, deeper than alliance. Something that might grow into trust if they were careful enough, lucky enough, strong enough to survive what was coming. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm clouds gathered against the stars. Rain would be welcome after weeks of dust and heat, but storms also brought flash floods and washed away tracks. They were running out of time to find answers. The first drops fell as they walked back toward the fires, cool against sunburned skin. The desert would drink deep tonight and remember moisture for weeks to come. Some things endured. Some things grew stronger after surviving drought. Layla glanced at Tacho as they reached the edge of camp. Water beaded on his dark hair. His profile was sharp against the firelight. A good face. Honest. Built for hard country and harder choices. Maybe her proposal hadn't been as desperate as she'd thought. Maybe necessity and wisdom sometimes wore the same face. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had passed but left the air heavy with moisture and possibility. Layla woke to find Tacho already saddling his horse. Methodical movements in the half-light, ready for the day's hunt. The tracks will be fresh. He cinched the leather tight. Rain washed away the old sign. Whatever made new ones will show clear. She nodded and reached for her own gear. Her rifle felt heavier this morning, the weight of questions yet unanswered, of answers she might not want to find. They rode out as the sun crested the canyon walls, two riders casting long shadows on wet earth. Behind them, the combined camp stirred to life, smoke from breakfast fires, the sound of children laughing, normal sounds that felt precious in their fragility. The first evidence lay 3 miles north, boot prints in soft mud, clear as a signature. Layla dismounted and crouched beside them. Military issue. Worn heel on the left foot, same pattern she'd been tracking for weeks. Size 10. Her fingers traced the outline. Heavy man, carries extra weight on his gun side. Tacho studied the surrounding ground. His eyes moved in methodical sweeps, reading the land story. 6 men, maybe 7, came from the east, waited here for something, or someone. The thought hung unspoken between them. They followed the trail deeper into broken country, red stone towers and hidden valleys. Perfect terrain for ambush, for watching, for choosing your moment and striking clean. The second discovery made Layla's stomach clench. Spent brass scattered around a sniper's nest. Recent fire. The metal still carried the scent of burned powder. Someone had taken careful aim from this spot within the last day. What were they shooting at? Tacho examined the brass. No bodies, no blood. Practice maybe. Or sending a message. She studied the sight lines. The position offered clear views of 3 different water sources. Anyone approaching would be visible from here, exposed, vulnerable. They climbed higher, following the tracks toward rougher ground. The morning warmed, but something cold settled in Layla's chest. Professional recognition. She'd done this work before, tracking enemies through hostile territory, reading their intentions in the sign they left behind. The third sight broke the pattern wide open. A camp, recently abandoned, fire rings still warm, scattered gear and supplies, but the details painted a picture that made her hands shake with anger. Maps. Detailed drawings of both her settlement and Tacha's traditional grounds, marked with distances, guard positions, water sources. Someone had been watching them for weeks, learning their routines, planning something terrible. Dutch Kellerman, Tacho held up a brass button torn from a cavalry coat. The name was etched in the metal, personal insignia. You know this man. By reputation. Layla's voice came tight and controlled. Mercenary, gun for hire. Takes contracts the army won't touch officially. Kellerman had served in the war, Confederate cavalry until the cause collapsed. Then he'd gone freelance, selling violence to whoever paid best, railroad companies, mining interests. Anyone who needed problems eliminated quietly. Look at this. Tacho's call drew her attention to another section of the camp. Small bottles lined up in military precision, labels in careful handwriting, arsenic, strychnine, mercury compounds, a poisoner's arsenal. The pieces clicked together in her mind. The systematic attacks, the sickness spreading through both camps, the timing that suggested coordination rather than coincidence. Someone had hired Kellerman to clear them out, all of them, permanent-like. We need to get back. The urgency hit her suddenly, hard. If he knows our positions this well, he could hit the camps right now. They rode hard, pushing their horses across broken ground and treacherous footing. The sun climbed higher. Heat began shimmering off the rocks. Time moved against them with each mile. But the camp stood quiet when they arrived. No smoke, no sounds of conflict, just people going about their daily business, children playing, women mending clothes, men checking weapons and gear. Layla gathered her people first. Quick words about immediate danger, about the need to pull together and trust their new allies completely. Faces went hard. Hands moved to rifle stocks. These were folks who'd survived everything the frontier could throw at them. They knew how to respond to threats. Tacho spoke to his warriors in their own language. The tone needed no translation. Serious words for serious men. Plans forming in the space between sentences. Strategies built on generations of fighting for survival. Within an hour, both camps had transformed. Defensive positions selected. Fields of fire established. Supplies secured and weapons distributed. The casual grouping of refugees became a military unit with frightening speed. He'll come soon. Layla checked her rifle's action. Smooth, reliable, ready for work. Men like Kellerman don't wait once they know their cover's blown. Good. Tacho's response carried quiet satisfaction. We're ready. But ready meant different things to different people. Her folks were used to running, to hiding and hoping the danger passed them by. His people knew how to fight but fought as individuals, warriors pursuing personal honor. This would require something else entirely. Unity, coordination, trust between groups that had been enemies yesterday morning. Show me your best defensive position. She addressed both groups. Show me where we make our stand. They chose the high ground above the water hole, natural rock walls providing cover, clear sight lines in all directions. Only two approaches an enemy could use. Bottlenecks where superior numbers meant less. The work began immediately, moving supplies, preparing ammunition, creating interlocking fields of fire. Both groups contributed skills learned in different schools but aimed at the same goal. Judith worked with the Comanche medicine man, sharing knowledge about treating wounds, old hands teaching younger ones. Wisdom passed between cultures without ceremony or fuss. Samuel and his Comanche friend gathered stones for additional barriers, boys becoming men in the space between heartbeats, learning that survival sometimes required fighting for what you valued. As afternoon shadows lengthened, a scout reported movement on the eastern horizon. Dusk clouds, multiple riders approaching fast, too many to be merchants or casual travelers. Layla found herself standing beside Tacho as they watched the approaching threat. Their shoulders almost touched, close enough to feel the tension in his breathing, the controlled readiness of a professional warrior. Whatever happens, his words came quiet, meant for her alone. We face it together, together. She repeated the word, tasted its weight, its promise, its danger. The dust clouds grew larger. Kellerman was coming for all of them. But he'd find something different than two scattered groups of refugees. He'd find an alliance, a partnership forged in necessity and tempered by shared purpose. The sun began its descent toward the western peaks. Soon, there would be darkness. And in that darkness, men would discover what happened when desperate people found something worth defending. Together. The first attack came at dusk, probing shots from long range, testing their defenses. Kellerman's men fired from hidden positions in the rocks. Muzzle flashes bloomed orange in the gathering darkness. Layla's people returned fire with disciplined volleys, measured shots aimed at sound and shadow. No wasted ammunition, no panicked responses. 2 years of army training showed in their steady rhythm. Tacho's warriors moved through the darkness without sound, flanking positions, using terrain they'd known since childhood. Their arrows found targets that rifles couldn't reach, silent death from unexpected angles. The attack lasted 20 minutes, then silence returned to the canyon. Kellerman's men withdrew to regroup, count their losses, plan their next approach. 3 down on their side. Mary Caldwell's report came crisp and professional. The woman had found her calling in combat. Maybe 4, hard to tell in this light. Any of ours hit. Layla checked each position, each face, counting souls under her protection. Joseph took a graze on his shoulder, Judith's patching him up. Tacho emerged from the shadows. My people are unharmed. The casual way he said my people had changed, expanded. Now it included everyone in the canyon, everyone who'd chosen to stand together against the darkness. 2 hours passed. Kellerman regrouped in the distance. Campfires flickered beyond rifle range. He had numbers on his side. Maybe 20 men, all professionals, all willing to kill for money. He'll try something different next time. Layla studied the enemy positions through her field glasses. Straight assault didn't work. He'll get creative. What would you do, Tacho asked, in his position? She considered the terrain, the tactical situation, the resources available to a man like Kellerman. Cut off our water, force us out of position, make us come to him. As if summoned by her words, explosions echoed from the canyon mouth. Dynamite charges, carefully placed to bring down rock slides, to seal the passages that led to other water sources. Kellerman wasn't just trying to kill them anymore. He was trying to trap them, force a siege where his superior numbers would eventually tell, patient like a spider, methodical as death itself. How long can we hold? The question came from Samuel. The boy had appointed himself ammunition counter, serious work for serious times. With careful shooting, maybe 3 days. Layla's estimate assumed perfect discipline. No wasted shots, every bullet finding its mark. Less if they push hard. 3 days to find a solution, to break the siege or turn the tables. 3 days before thirst and exhaustion made their choices for them. That night she found herself walking the perimeter again, old habits in new circumstances. The defensive positions were solid. The fields of fire overlapped properly, everything that training and experience could provide. But something else nagged at her, a sense of missing pieces, of patterns not yet understood. Tacho materialized beside her, silent approach that no longer startled her. Her body had learned to recognize his presence, to welcome it even in the midst of danger. You're thinking. His observation carried no judgment, just understanding. Kellerman's not acting alone. This operation costs money, serious money. She gestured toward the enemy fires. Someone hired him, someone with deep pockets and long reach. Railroad, maybe, or mining interests. Someone who wants this whole area cleared of inconvenient people. The thought made her jaw clench. They weren't just fighting mercenaries, they were fighting money, power, the kind of force that bought politicians and judges. Does it matter tonight? No, she admitted the truth. Tonight we just survive. They stood in comfortable silence, two leaders sharing the weight of impossible decisions. The stars wheeled overhead, distant and beautiful and utterly indifferent to human struggles. After this is over, Tacho's words came carefully, testing ground between them. Assuming we survive, what then? The question held layers, personal questions wrapped inside tactical ones. What happened when the immediate danger passed, when they had time to think beyond the next fight? We build something. The answer surprised her with its certainty. Something that lasts, something worth defending. Together, if you'll have me. His hand found hers in the darkness, calloused fingers intertwining, warmth in the cold night air. A promise made without words, a future imagined despite present dangers. The second attack came before dawn, fire arrows arcing through the darkness. Kellerman had found flammable materials, pitch and oil, turning the canyon into a potential furnace. But Tacha's people knew fire, knew how to fight flames in dry country, sand and blankets, controlled burns that robbed the enemy's fire of fuel. Ancient wisdom applied to modern warfare. The arrows burned bright and died quickly. Kellerman's flames found nothing to sustain them. The canyon walls stood blackened but intact. The defenders remained in position. Dawn revealed the cost. Smoke hung heavy in the still air, supplies damaged, water barrels punctured by burning shafts. The siege was taking its toll even without direct casualties. He's learning our capabilities. Layla examined the damage with professional eyes. Next time will be worse. But morning also brought unexpected hope. A dust cloud from the south, single rider approaching fast. The scout carried news that changed everything. Federal Marshal. The man gasped out his report between gulps of precious water. 2 days behind me, got word about illegal activities, mercenary actions against civilians. Someone had talked. Someone with authority had listened. Help was coming but might arrive too late to matter. Can we hold 2 more days? Tacho asked the question everyone was thinking. Layla counted ammunition, counted water barrels, counted the faces around her. People she'd come to love, people she refused to abandon. We hold. Her voice carried absolute conviction. Whatever it takes. The morning brought another revelation. Mary Caldwell approached with careful steps. Something important in her posture, news that couldn't wait. Found something last night, during the fire fight. She held up a brass button, different from the one they'd found at Kellerman's camp. This one bore a railroad company insignia. Picked it off a dead man's coat. Denver and Rio Grande Western. The railroad that wanted to push through this exact territory. The railroad that needed clear title to disputed lands. The railroad that could afford to hire Dutch Kellerman and his killers. Now they knew who was behind the attacks, who wanted them dead, who had the money and influence to buy mercenaries and corrupt officials. But knowing your enemy and defeating him were different things entirely. They still faced superior numbers, still fought a siege with limited supplies, still needed to survive until help arrived. 2 more days. Layla spoke to the assembled defenders, her people and Tacha's people, all of them her people now. 2 more days and this nightmare ends. The canyon walls caught her words and threw them back. Echo and promise combined. 2 more days to prove that ordinary people could stand against money and power. 2 more days to build something worth keeping. The sun climbed higher. Heat began shimmering off stone walls. In the distance, Kellerman's men prepared for another assault. But something had changed in the defenders' positions. Desperation had hardened into determination. Fear had transformed into fury. They would hold. Whatever came next, they would hold. The 3rd day dawned blood red, dust in the high atmosphere, storm clouds gathering beyond the eastern peaks. The air tasted of copper and coming violence. Kellerman's final assault began at noon. No probing attacks this time. No testing of defenses. Everything he had left thrown against their positions in one desperate gamble. 20 men charging across open ground, rifles blazing, war cries echoing off canyon walls. Professional killers earning their pay in lead and fury, but the defenders were ready. 2 days of siege had welded them into something new, something harder than the sum of their parts. Every shot counted. Every movement served the whole. Layla's rifle spoke with methodical precision. One shot, one target down, reload and acquire the next threat. Her hands moved without conscious thought, muscle memory from 100 skirmishes. Beside her, Tacho's bow sang death across the canyon, arrows finding gaps in cover that bullets couldn't reach, ancient weapons proving their worth against modern warfare. The charge broke against their defenses, scattered, reformed, came again with diminished numbers and growing desperation. Kellerman had promised his employers results. His reputation demanded victory. But some battles couldn't be won with money alone. The assault lasted 30 minutes. When the dust settled, half of Kellerman's force lay still on the canyon floor. The rest had withdrawn to lick their wounds, to count the cost of attacking cornered people with nothing left to lose. Movement in the rocks. Mary's sharp eyes caught what others missed. Southeast ridge, someone's flanking. Kellerman himself. The man was done with frontal attacks, done with losing men to stubborn defenders. Time for personal attention to the problem. He came alone, rifle in hand, moving through stone and shadow with predators' patience. A professional killer at the peak of his craft, hunting the leaders who held everything together. Layla saw him first, muzzle flash from an impossible angle. The bullet whispered past her ear, close enough to part her hair, close enough to smell death's approach. She rolled behind cover. Granite chips exploded where her head had been. Kellerman had found the perfect sniper's nest. Commanding view of their positions, protected approach from the rear. Stay down. Tacha's command came sharp and urgent. I can reach him. But reaching Kellerman meant crossing open ground, meant exposing himself to that deadly rifle, meant probable death for the man she'd grown to love. No, her voice carried absolute authority. We go together or not at all. The standoff stretched taut. Kellerman held the high ground, superior position, clear shots at anyone who moved. But he was alone now, cut off from his remaining men, trapped by his own success. That's when Samuel appeared. The boy had found another route through the rocks. Young eyes and nimble feet discovering paths that older minds had missed. He carried something in his hands, something that glinted metal in the afternoon sun. A mirror. Polished steel that caught sunlight and threw it back concentrated, aimed, focused into Kellerman's eyes with blinding intensity. The sniper's next shot went wide, way wide. The unexpected flash had disrupted his aim, ruined his carefully planned ambush, given the defenders their chance. Layla moved, Tacho moved, together across the killing ground with bullets whining around them, racing toward the rocks where Kellerman waited, where this would end one way or another. They reached his position as the mirror's light faded, found him struggling to clear his vision, to bring his rifle to bear on the approaching threat. Too late, far too late. Drop it. Layla's Colt pressed against his temple, cold metal against hot skin. Game's over. Kellerman's hands opened. His rifle clattered on stone. The most dangerous man in 3 territories brought low by a boy with a mirror and 2 people who refused to quit. You killed them. Tacho's voice carried quiet fury. Poisoned the water. Brought sickness to children. Just business. Kellerman's response held no remorse, no recognition of the lives he destroyed. Railroad pays good money for clear title. Not anymore. The federal marshal's voice echoed from the canyon mouth. 10 men in blue uniforms. Badges that meant law had finally reached this forgotten corner of the territory. Justice riding hard behind schedule, but not too late. Marshal Davis looked older than his years, gray in his beard, lines around his eyes. A man who'd seen too much but kept doing his job anyway. He examined the scene with professional attention. Dutch Kellerman, you're under arrest for murder, conspiracy. crimes against civilians. The charges rolled off his tongue, practiced words that carried the weight of law. Railroad companies getting investigated too, lots of folks going to answer for this. Kellerman said nothing, professional to the end. But his employers would talk. Money men always talked when their necks were on the line. The whole conspiracy would unravel now. As the prisoners were led away, Layla found herself alone with Tacho on the canyon rim. Below them their people celebrated survival. Above them storm clouds finally opened. Rain fell on thirsty ground. It's over. His words carried wonder, relief. The sound of a man who'd expected to die and found himself breathing. This part is, she watched water run off the rocks, pooling in natural basins, washing away the blood and dust of battle. Now we build something new. The marriage proposal. He spoke carefully, testing the ground between them. Does it still stand? She turned to face him fully. This man who'd stood beside her against impossible odds, who'd proven himself in ways that mattered, who'd become essential to her vision of the future. Not as a business arrangement, her answer came clear and certain, not as a political alliance. Then why? Because I love you. The words tasted strange on her tongue, foreign, frightening, true. Because you're the strongest man I've ever known. Because our children will inherit a world we made together. His kiss tasted of rain and promises, of futures built on solid ground, of two strong people choosing each other in a world that often chose nothing but violence. The storm passed. Stars appeared in the clearing sky. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, wild song for wild country, music for people strong enough to call this place home. Tomorrow they would begin building. A settlement that welcomed outcasts. A community that judged people by their actions rather than their origins. A place where strength meant protecting the weak instead of exploiting them. But tonight they held each other in the darkness. Two survivors who'd found something worth more than survival. Who discovered that love could grow in the hardest ground if tended by patient hands. The canyon walls caught their whispered words and held them, promises echoing in stone, vows spoken to the desert wind, a future taking root in unlikely soil. 6 months passed in the space between one breath and the next. Summer heat gave way to autumn coolness. The canyon walls held warmth during the day and released it slowly through the night. Perfect conditions for building something that would last. The settlement grew organically, adobe houses rising from the red earth, gardens carved into terrace slopes, workshops where skilled hands created tools and furniture and hope. What had begun as a desperate alliance became a thriving community. Layla stood on the wooden porch of the house she shared with Tacho. Her hand rested on the gentle swell of her belly. 6 months married. 3 months carrying their child, the future taking shape beneath her heart. The irrigation channels are working. Tacho emerged from the fields where corn and beans grew in neat rows. Comanche agricultural knowledge combined with techniques Mary had learned in Arkansas. Hybrid wisdom producing hybrid crops. The marriage ceremony had taken place under autumn stars. Two traditions woven together without compromise. Judith had spoken Christian vows while the Comanche medicine man blessed their union with sage smoke and ancient words. Both communities celebrating, both cultures represented. Samuel's been asking about school again. Layla watched the boy directing younger children in the construction of a play fort. Natural leader, born teacher. Says we need proper books, proper slates. Marshall Davis promised to send supplies from Santa Fe. Tacho settled beside her on the steps, their shoulders touched, comfortable proximity that spoke of shared burdens and shared joys. Books, medicine, news from the outside world. The outside world seemed distant now, abstract. This canyon had become their universe, these people their nation. Federal authorities had prosecuted the railroad conspiracy. Executives in prison. Kellerman hanged. Justice served with frontier efficiency, but justice was just the beginning. Building something better took daily effort, daily choices, daily commitment to ideals larger than personal comfort. Mary wants to start a newspaper. The idea still amazed Layla, a newspaper in the middle of nowhere, written by a woman who'd walked 800 miles to escape hatred, says people need to know what we're doing here, how different groups can work together. Good. Tacho's approval came without hesitation. Let the world see what's possible. Their settlement attracted attention. Good attention mostly. Families seeking refuge from poverty and prejudice. Young couples wanting to build lives free from old hatreds. Even a few former soldiers looking for peace after years of violence. Not everyone stayed. Some found the isolation too complete. Others couldn't adjust to the mixing of cultures. A few left when they realized that strength here meant protecting the weak rather than dominating them. But those who remained grew roots deep as the canyon walls. Evening brought familiar rituals, shared meals prepared by willing hands, stories told around communal fires, children playing games that blended traditions from different worlds, music that combined instruments and melodies previously separated by cultural boundaries. Judith had passed peacefully in her sleep 2 months ago, age and hard living finally claiming their due. But she'd lived to see the poison cleared from the water, lived to see the sickness fade from young faces, lived to know her knowledge would continue in the hands she'd trained. The Comanche medicine man now worked alongside the settlement's new doctor, a young woman from back east who'd come seeking adventure and found purpose, healing that acknowledged both scientific method and spiritual wisdom. Do you ever regret it? The question came from somewhere deep. Some private worry that surfaced in quiet moments. Giving up your freedom for this? Tacho considered her words. His eyes moved across the settlement they'd built together. Houses where families slept safely. Fields where crops grew strong. Children who would inherit a world more generous than the one that had shaped their parents. This is freedom. His answer carried absolute conviction. Freedom to build instead of run. Freedom to plant instead of scavenge. Freedom to love without fear. Their child moved beneath her hand. Strong kicks from strong limbs, already restless, already eager to meet the world waiting outside the womb. What do you think they'll be? She spoke to the growing life inside her. Boy or girl, doesn't matter. Tacho's hand covered hers, 2 hands protecting their future. They'll be strong, they'll be loved, they'll be free to choose their own path. The settlement's bell tower chimed 8 times. Evening prayers for those who wanted them. Time for quiet reflection on the day's accomplishments. Time to count blessings that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. A coyote called from the canyon rim. Wild song for wild country. But the sound no longer carried loneliness. Other voices answered from different directions. Pack animals finding each other in the darkness. Community calls across the empty spaces. I love you. The words came easier now. Practice had worn smooth the rough edges of vulnerability. I love what we've built. What we're building. The strongest foundation. His response carried the weight of personal truth. Love that chose itself. Partnership that proved itself. Community that grew from nothing but stubborn hope. Inside the house, a fire crackled in the stone hearth. Warmth against the cooling night. Light against the gathering darkness. Simple comforts that felt profound after years of uncertainty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, always did in this country. Weather and isolation and the thousand small difficulties of building civilization from scratch. But tomorrow would also bring new possibilities, new faces, new reasons to believe in what they were creating. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, distant suns burning in the darkness. Light that had traveled unimaginable distances to reach this small canyon where 2 cultures had learned to become one people. Their child kicked again, stronger this time, demanding attention, announcing presence, already part of the conversation between present and future. Strong child. Tacho's observation carried pride and wonder. Takes after their mother, takes after both parents. Layla corrected gently, best of both worlds. Wind stirred the evening air, carrying scents of wood smoke and growing things, of horses and leather and honest sweat, of home built with patient hands and defended with steady hearts. In the distance, a train whistle echoed across the desert. The railroad had come after all, but not as conqueror, as servant, bringing supplies and news and new settlers to a community that welcomed difference instead of fearing it. The future stretched ahead, uncertain as weather, challenging as the desert itself, but no longer lonely, no longer hopeless, no longer bound by the limitations that had defined their separate pasts. Two strong people had found each other in the wasteland, had chosen love over fear, had built something larger than themselves from the raw materials of hope and stubborn determination. Their child would inherit that legacy, would grow up knowing that strength meant protection, that love meant choice, that the best foundation for any future was built from the courage to believe in something better. The canyon walls held their whispered promises, stone memory of human dreams made real through daily effort and daily faith. Tomorrow would test those dreams again. Tomorrow always did, but tonight they held each other in the darkness. Two survivors who had found something worth more than survival, who had discovered that the strongest foundations were built not from stone and steel, but from the patient accumulation of small acts of love and large acts of courage. The stars burned on. The wind sang its ancient songs. And in a small canyon in the middle of nowhere, the future took root in ground watered by hope and tended by hands that refused to let go of impossible dreams. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.